19th December 1941. Alexandria Harbor, 02.15. Two Royal Navy battleships, HMS Queen Elizabeth and HMS Valiant, sleep at anchor, over 30,000 tons apiece. Anti-torpedo nets hang like iron curtains. The boom gate is logged secure. Patrol craft trace slow green loops on the harbor chart. Dockyard lights smear across black water. This square of sea is supposed to be the safest in the Middle East. Beneath that skin, two men move without a wake. They ride a slow-running torpedo. The Siluro, a Lenta Corsa, the human torpedo. At its nose waits a detachable warhead on a clockwork delay, built to kiss steel and wait for dawn. Closed-circuit rebreathers buy them less than an hour. Every turn of the prop spends minutes they do not have. Tar and creosote bleed from the pilings. Diesel breath hangs under the key. The pilot feathers the motor until the cylinder whispers. His partner reads the harbor by touch. Knot, splice, cable, weed. Under, not through. Wait, lift, slide. The sea helps those who move at its speed. Above, routine makes its rounds. Gate secure, nets quiet, patrol track green. A sentry studies the dark because men believe in barriers. He sees nothing, because nothing is what he expects. Past the gate, the harbor changes from wall to room. Hulls become shadows. Anchors become landmarks. Mooring chains sing softly in the current. The divers angle toward a mass that erases starlight from beneath. 02:21. The harbor believes in its walls. By sunrise, those walls will believe in water. Alexandria is a hinge. Turn it, and the door between the Mediterranean and the Red Sea opens, or jams. On the fleet room chart, the pencil line is simple. Suez, Alexandria, Malta, the convoy lanes that keep armies alive. Three facts set the stakes. Malta, tiny on a map, enormous in the math. From its runways and pens, aircraft and submarines tear at Axis supply. Malta survives on convoys. Convoys survive on a fleet base close enough to fight for them. That base is Alexandria, the Eighth Army. A long, hungry animal moving across sand. Fuel, shells, food, water, engines, boots. None of it grows in the desert. All of it rides ships that berth here before rails and roads drag it west. A crane that lifts a crate in this harbor is a gun that fires tomorrow at the wire. Presence. Battleships don't win air duels, but their silhouettes change plans. They anchor screens, stiffen convoys, and force the enemy to count differently. Hurt them, and the calculus shifts. Thinner escorts, slip timetables, probably safe, becomes only if we must. Safe Eastern Med harbors are few. Haifa is smaller. Port Said is a canal mouth, not a fortress. Alexandria is workshop, warehouse, barracks, hospital, fuel farm, and command post in one. Every boom and net is more than steel. It is a promise to a theater. Your supplies have somewhere to land. In this war, hours are the currency no one can mint. Damage a capital ship in harbor, let her settle in soft mud, and on paper, she remains present. But on calendars that matter, she is absent for months. Caution multiplies the loss. Convoys sail thinner or later. Opportunities age out. That is tonight's wager. A slow machine and 6 lungs tug a thread that runs from a keel in Alexandria to a truck bogged in sand 300 miles away. Numbers become outcomes here. Tonnage becomes fuel. Fuel becomes miles. Miles become positions taken or lost. Up above, the patrol completes its loop and marks the gate again. Secure. Down below, the cylinder noses toward a shadow so large it hides the stars. The city keeps breathing. They are here to make it catch its breath. They called themselves assault swimmers. Their trade was patience. Selection began with silence. Hold black water against your face and count to 60 without swallowing fear. Fix a jam with numb hands. Recite a checklist while your lungs argue for air. Strength lifts, control lasts. Their tool, the Siluro e Lenta Corsa, was a sentence written in exact words. Battery, quiet electric motor, compass under a dim hood, 2 saddles, and at the nose, a detachable warhead on a clockwork delay with sling and clamp. Human torpedo was the nickname. Slow was the doctrine. Speed makes bubbles and noise. Slow is a whisper the sea agrees to keep. The rebreather was miracle and judge. No bubbles meant no alarm above, but discipline was the price. Each breath had to be calm enough for the chemical lungs to scrub carbon dioxide. Panic made the machine cruel. They learned to lower their pulse on command, to talk to fear as to a stray dog. Quiet, later. Gloves dulled touch, so touch became language. In practice tanks, they learned nets like mechanics learn engines. Knot to knot, clamp to clamp. They heard how an anchor chain sings when a ship turns. They smelled wood different from steel in the dark. Instructors didn't shout. They asked questions. What if the timer sticks? Wind again. Check the safety. Seconds don't obey shouting. Your partners set floods. Share the mouthpiece. Count the exchange. Work the problem you can touch. Compass drifts under a pier. Feel the current. Follow the shadow where barnacles thin. That's the keel. Attach the sling. Seat the clamp. Place the charge under magazines if you can. Under engines if you cannot. Set the clock. Teeth on the key if fingers fail. Do not admire your work. Leave. They were not daredevils, but craftsmen, accountants of seconds and meters, riding a small, stubborn machine to a wall they could touch, where hands mattered more than names. Tonight, those hands are inside Alexandria with a simple promise. Exactness beats armor when the water is on your side. 2:22. In the signal tower, the watch officer works the night like an abacus. Log, gate, secured, nets, tension nominal, patrol track, green, harbor lights, masked, wind, NE, 4 knots, tide, slack. He dots each line because dots become sleep in the morning. A motor launch prowls at walking speed, wake as polite as a whisper. The coxswain keeps her on the painted lane. The bowman warms his hands over a mug and watches the black between the piers. Searchlights stay caged. They are not for sweeping men who must work. They are for answering a shout. On the boom, the gate vessel sits like a locked knuckle. Chains creak, wire hums. The watch taps a shackle with a spanner and listens. Iron tells the truth in its own voice. He notes the pull. Easy. Slack water. Good. Along the oil jetty, a sentry paces 15 steps and back, 15 and back. Creosote and salt live in his coat. He knows the harbor by sound. A tug's sleeping diesel, a pump's thin whine beneath the quay, the little iron music of moorings biting bollards. When something is wrong in a port, it rarely looks wrong first. It sounds wrong. On Queen Elizabeth and Valiant, the bridge wings glow under hoods. Quartermasters check anchor bearings. Binoculars see more reflection than water. Darkened ship is habit now. Even in harbor, lamps are turned down. A tray of enamel cups arrives. Strong, sweet, hot. The officer of the watch writes what the officer ashore writes. Harbor condition, normal. Passwords are walked at the gates. An Aldous lamp blinks a routine exchange to a late boat crossing inside the breakwater. Challenge, reply, good night. In the shops, lathes and presses hum behind blackout curtains. A fitter tags a finished part for the morning crew. Far behind him, the tank farms sleep under sand berms like whales beneath dunes. The telephone rattles now and then. Eastern loop, green. Boom, reports all secure. Fuel transfer 0400 0600 confirmed. Confidence stacks like crates. Checked, tied, stowed. If the harbor has a superstition, it is direction. Danger comes from outside, over the wall, through the gap, past the gate. Every checklist is written for that wind. It is 0225. The patrol turns at the end of its lane and shows a notch of wake under the key. The gate watch rubs a stiff shoulder and watches the chain breathe with the tide. The sentry on the jetty stops to stamp warmth into his boots and hears only what he expects to hear. 0226. The tower pens a last line and lifts the nib, leaving a wet thread of ink. Everything is normal. Everything is accounted for. Everything except the water. Earlier that night, outside the breakwater, the submarine Scirè rides the swell like a held breath. Ballast trimmed fine, diesels long since silenced. She ghosts forward on batteries. No smoke, no ripple. The harbor lookouts can mistake for weather. In the conning tower, the captain watches the coast as a set of distances. Headland to light, light to buoy, buoy to the black seam that hides the gate. Below, the boat is a workshop under red lamps. Men move with the careful economy of people who cannot afford a dropped wrench. Along the casing, sight 3 sealed cylinders, watertight pods that carry the slow-running torpedoes to work. Each pod is a promise that becomes a problem if rushed. Surface, deck awash. Valves answer with a sigh. Scirè rises just enough to bring steel and sea level into a handshake. No more. Hatches crack. Cold air slides down the ladder, and the night enters the boat. Hands in rubber hoods appear, then shoulders, then the rest of men who have trained to be smaller than water. They move onto the casing like mechanics stepping onto a narrow beam inside a factory that happens to be the sea. Covers spin off the pods. Locks turn. The first Siluro, a Lenta Corsa, is eased out on guide rails, its weight shared between gloved palms and gravity the crew has measured to the kilogram. The pilot and his partner settle into the saddles as if taking their seats in a small, unforgiving church. Checklists are spoken softly, not for secrecy. Sound is swallowed by the wind, but for rhythm. Battery, on. Lamp, dim. Compass, true. Rebreather, valves, scrubber, seal. Warhead, safety in, timer covered. Buoyancy, neutral. Time from tower? A gloved hand shows the answer. Oxygen is not a number. It is a fuse. A swell rolls under the bow. The cylinder tilts and corrects. Alive, but not impatient. The captain leans from the tower and meets the pilot's eyes. No speech, just the smallest nod. Now. They slide clear. The black closes over them without a sound. The second crew follows, then the third, each leaving Scirè, lighter in steel and heavier in worry. Lines are cast off the guide rails, hands lifted, palms open, empty, so the divers know they owe nothing more to the submarine. The boat owes nothing more to them except the space they've created. Flood down. The captain takes Scirè back under, a careful descent that erases the moment of contact from the surface record. In the control room, the helmsman steadies on a course that will carry the boat away from the gate and its habits. Luck is a resource. The submarine spends none of it where the swimmers must spend all of theirs. Outside, the coast grows taller as the seabed rises. The harbor's breath can be felt even out here, a slow draw and release as tide and basin trade weight. The men on the cylinders angle toward that breath, keeping low where ropes sag and shadows pool. Behind them, Scirè becomes a rumor, then a memory, then a calculation on someone else's chart. Ahead of them is the wall everyone trusts. They are not coming over it. They are coming under. 2.27. The harbor's hum gets inside the skull. Pumps, chains, the far throb of something big turning. The pilot dims the hooded lamp to a bruise, and the world becomes fingertip-sized. The compass wobbles near a pier. Steel pulls the needle like a lie. They kill the light and read the water instead. Cold runs along the piles. Weeds comb one way. Follow the grain. A trickle of brine sneaks into a wrist seal. The second man squeezes, feels the rubber bite again, then lets the cold sit there like a small debt to be paid later. The rebreather tastes faintly of lime, scrubber dust. He rocks the set once, slow, to settle it. Breathe smaller. Make the machine kind. Something catches. Not the net proper, just a lazy strand from a splice, snagging a strap on the cylinder. They freeze. Speed tightens knots. Stillness loosens them. The pilot eases a hand's width back thrust. The second man slides 2 fingers under the strand and teaches it to forget. Free. The checklist in the head is a rosary for nerves. Buoyancy neutral. Lamp low. Timer safe. Sling checked. The pilot counts the corrections they've already spent. Seal, compass, snag, and leaves room for one more. If you make 3 corrections, make the 4th be abort. Not yet. Ahead, the water fattens into that special silence a sleeping hull makes. The lamp comes up one shade, paints sand under a glove. The keel's shadow is colder than the rest of the sea. The pilot nudges the nose along the curve of a belly he cannot see but knows by geometry. The timer cap is stiff. Numb fingers lie. Teeth tell the truth. He bites the key, wins to the number they rehearsed, feels the small, cruel confidence of clockwork engage. The second man works the sling and clamp by memory. Pass, seat, cinch. He rehearses the failure in his head. If the strap slips, hand here. If the clamp bites wrong, back off, breathe, try again. Somewhere behind them, another pair is late. That is the sea's opinion, not theirs. Time is a fuse, but it is also a map. Hit your marks, and the map stays yours. They move again, under, not through, adding no ripples to the story above. The harbor remains convinced of itself. The work gets smaller. The risks get larger. This is where exactness earns its pay. 02:29. The barrier arrives as a smell before it becomes a shape. Tar on rope, old weed, iron that has lived in salt. The lamp lifts one shade and shows a wall that is not a wall. Floats above, sinkers below, wire mesh breathing with the tide. The harbor's eyelid. They do not attack it. They court it. The pilot eases the cylinder parallel to the net and lets the current do the introductions. Fingers read the grammar. Cable thickness, knot spacing. The lazy belly where slack water has made the weave tired. Under, not through. Never through. Through makes noise. Noise makes men. The second man clips a small lead from his belt to the net's hem. Just enough weight to ask it a favor. The mesh sags a hand's width. Buoyancy bleeds from his lungs into the bag. They sink together, the cylinder and the curtain, until a black triangle opens where shadow meets mud. They wait 1 count, 2. The sea tests their nerve with a gentle push. The pilot feathers a breath of prop, and the machine slides, heel, hip, shoulder, through the seam. The net remembers its job and rises behind them, closing the rumor they just wrote. Ahead, The boom gate's hardware looms. Piles shot in iron, a chain like a sleeping spine, bumpers, camels that keep ships from chewing wood. Steel draws the compass off true. They kill the lamp and let their hands think. Pile grain runs vertical. Weed runs horizontal. The gap is where neither runs at all. The current changes voice near the hinge. Water curls around a cuff of iron and returns on itself in a small, patient eddy. That is the place. Eddies mean hollows. Hollows mean room. The pilot noses into it and holds still. The second man reaches, finds the chain by knuckle, then by palm. He counts links. 1, 2, 3. Feels the long, slow inhale of the tide. On the exhale, they move. Timing is a tool. It turns heavy into light. A patrol launch hums past above, close enough that their ribs feel the prop beat as a pressure in the water. The divers press into the hinge's shadow and become part of the gate's idea of itself. The launch goes on, believing what it must. They clear the last shackle by centimeters. Paint scrapes rubber. No sound climbs to the surface. Only a flake of old red drifting like a leaf. The second man takes the lead weight back from the net, clips it to his belt again, pays the favor, and pockets the gratitude. Now the harbor is a room, not a wall. The mooring buoys are stars hung low. Chains drop from them into a dark that smells of steel. The men breathe small, even breaths, and count the ones they can afford to spend. 02:31. Behind them, the gate swings on in its sleep. Ahead, the belly of a battleship waits where the water goes deepest. 2:32. The sea goes quieter here, as if the ship swallows sound. The keel's shadow is colder than the rest of the water. Paint grits under a glove. Barnacles sketch a map of neglect and time. The pilot eases the cylinder alongside until steel becomes landscape. Frames. Bilge keel. The long flat, where weight meets water. Lamp. One shade. Just enough green to make edges into choices. They park the machine by touch. The second man slides forward, hands rehearsing a dance he's done in the dark 100 times. Unship the warhead from its cradle. Cradle it again with his body. Let the cylinder carry nothing but his breathing. The charge is heavy in the way a promise is heavy. Find the belly. If you can, under the magazines. If you cannot, under the engines. He reads ribs with his knuckles, measures by reach and memory. Here. The pilot steadies the nose against a frame. Small pressure, no scrape. Sling. Pass. Clamp. Seat. Cinch. Flat. No twist. He feeds the canvas like a belt through a stubborn buckle, then sets the jaw of the clamp where steel will not knife it in a surge. The strap lies smooth. The charge kisses the hull. The timer cap is stiff. Fingers lie. Teeth tell the truth. He bites the key and whines. Clicks like a heartbeat, tiny and patient. He whines to the number they rehearsed. Dawn, plus a margin for mercy and chaos. Then stops. Breath held, listening for the clock's private confidence. It answers. Safety. Still in. Cover. Closed. The pilot maintains the smallest counterforce to the sea, so the sling will not sag before it earns its place. They speak in the language of taps on forearms. Check. Ready. Move. No need to spend words where seconds are coin. A tremor runs through the hull. Farm machinery answering a switch somewhere above. Pumps, perhaps. The divers freeze as the ship thinks about itself. No screws turn. No anchor pays out. The harbor stays asleep. Recheck. Strap. True. Clamp. Seated. Timer. Set. Safety. Still in. The second man presses his helmet to the steel and feels the ship with his skull. Nothing. Good. He slides a glove under the strap one last time to banish a loop that might flutter into noise. Flat now. Proper. They ease the cylinder back half a body length. The pilot presents the timer to the world, one hand on the cover, the other on the key. The second man nods. Now. The cover opens. The safety pin comes free. The key turns a last fraction. The clock takes the mission from their hands and hides it inside its teeth. Leave. They do not admire their work. They do not bless it. They angle away along the curve of the hull, letting the keel's shadow be their road until steel thins to water again. Behind them, the charge settles into its new idea of gravity and time. A faint hiccup of current tickles the strap, only the ship breathing. The second man checks the sling by memory, even as they go, habit running after certainty, and forces his hands to be still. Enough. They drift under the edge where mooring chains fall like rain into the dark. The pilot dims the lamp to bruise and lets his eyes belong to his fingers. The harbor is now a room with two doors, out by the way they came, or onto a second shadow if oxygen and nerve agree. A patrol launch turns above, its prop a distant drumbeat in the ribs. The divers stop and become part of the ship's silence until the beat fades. Then they move again, under, not through, carrying nothing but the taste of lime and cold, and the knowledge that dawn now has an appointment. 02:36. One belly taught the lesson. There is time, maybe, for one more. 2:41. The gauge slides left. The pilot feels the motor lose its nerve, the way a battery admits it is night inside. The rebreather tastes faintly of lime gone hot, CO2 pushing back. They choose a pocket of shadow beside a camel, the big bumper that keeps hull from key, to settle and reset. A vibration comes first, then a hum in the ribs. Patrol launch. The lamp dies to bruise. They flatten against slime-slick wood. The prop wash folds the water, presses them into the key. A searchlight stays caged, but a handheld hooded lamp flicks once, twice, habit more than suspicion. The beam finds a slick, then a shape that is not a rope, not a fish, not a log. Boat there, show yourself. Silence is a tactic until it becomes noise. The second man's set coughs a bitter note. The pilot makes the smallest choice a man can make and breaks the surface by a hand's width. Enough to breathe, too much to hide. Hands. Hands where I can see them. They are hauled in like gear. Boots thump. A mug clatters. A sailor curses the cold he's just pulled aboard. Rubber hoods, black faces, the smell of sea and chemical lungs. A petty officer does the checklist of a suspicious mind. Explosives. Where? How many? Are you alone? Names are the only answers that do not cost the mission. The divers give them, and nothing else. The petty officer decides the rest. Sabotage. Sure as fog. Take them in. Wake someone paid to be angry at this hour. 02:49. They are bundled ashore, and then, ironically, efficiently, moved to a ship whose lights are set low and whose name they do not speak. A ladder, a hatch, a compartment that smells of paint and iron, and men who have already gone off watch. A young officer with a clipped voice, an older one with sleep still in his coat. Tell me where the mine is. Silence. You will drown here in air if you prefer it. One of the divers looks at the deck. He is counting, not surrendering. Breaths, minutes, the small arithmetic of a clock he wound with his teeth. When he lifts his eyes, the room hears a decision arrive. There is danger in the harbor, he says, clear enough for every rank to understand. Move your men away from the bottoms of large ships. The younger officer leans in. Where? Which hull? Move them, the diver says again. You have little time. How much? He thinks of the number and does not spend it. Before sunrise. The older officer studies the faces in front of him. Men lie differently when they beg than when they warn. These do neither. He nods once, at a messenger, not at the prisoners. Sound the hands. Check lower compartments. Quietly. Outside, boots hit ladders. Hatches open and close with a softness that only a Navy can manage. Down in the compartment, the younger officer tries again, with questions that have answers, and the divers give him none. They have already chosen the only middle available. Warn without disarming. Spare lives without stealing the mission back from the clock. 03:02. Somewhere in the harbor, a second pair is still a rumor under steel. Somewhere else, a timer eats its way through dawn. The ship hums around them, unaware that it is already scheduled for a long, unwilling rest. 5:57. Black thins to metal blue. Lamps fade. Gulls cut the seam of sky and water, and a harbor that believes in routine exhales. Below the battleships, other clocks stay faithful. Just after 6, the water moves first, an inhale with no sound, then a flat, brutal syllable that teaches steel a new language. A white sheet climbs the hull, slaps the key, vanishes. Inside, fittings shriek. Breakers snap. A man drops a cup and never hears it land. Across the roads, the second ship learns the same lesson a breath later. Shock, pause, then the slow, embarrassed settling of great weight into soft mud. Neither hull rolls, neither disappears. They simply sit, lower than pride can explain. Down by the oil jetty, a tanker turns into a flower of metal, petals torn and flattened by water, while a destroyer lashed nearby takes the blast in its teeth. Fragments fan out, then fall like rain with no sky to fall from. Orders arrive lean and fast. Sound the bilges, clear lower compartments, rig pumps, cast off boats. Sirens whine, confused to be needed here. The warning given in the small hours moves faster than fear. Ladders fill upward, not downward. Space appears where men would have been. The signal tower hesitates, then speaks all at once. Telephones, messengers, whistles, names. From the tank farms to the boom gate, a sentence no one wrote becomes policy. Inside is not safe. By 06:10, the harbor is quiet again, as if the sea has swallowed its laugh. But the big ships no longer belong to the timetable. They belong to gravity, silt, and repair. On a photograph, both battleships are still there, masts and funnels etched against the haze. On calendars that matter, they are gone. Power limps, pumps labor, frames sulk. A dockyard can lift a turret. It cannot lift time. The arithmetic ripples outward. Convoys to Malta are recounted with thinner screens, or nudged to later squares on the board. Patrol areas shuffle like cards dropped on a table. Caution multiplies everything. One violent minute becomes 6 cautious weeks. You do not have to sink a fleet to slow a theater. You only have to take options off the map. Language changes with it. When the battleships sail becomes when they can sail. Wardroom verbs acquire grease under their nails. Refloat, shore, brace, patch, inspect. Diver's chalk writes measurements under brown lamps. Cofferdams grow like scaffolds around pride. Out in the desert, the effect arrives by absence. A convoy that should have left under heavier cover waits for paperwork that really means courage. A tanker routed wider comes in later. An operation that depended on arrival turns into a plan that depends on weather instead. The enemy counts days in communiques. The British count them in notebooks. Both know the price. The shock is not that a harbor was attacked. Harbors have been attacked. The shock is how, with patience, inches, and a slow machine. And what it bought? Time, which no one can mint and everyone must spend. Alexandria answers, as institutions do, more of what it trusts. Nets checked twice, patrols tightened, lamps hooded lower, but an idea has escaped the net. A wall is not a wall if the water beneath it is part of the enemy's plan. The swimmers do not see the blasts. They feel them, through deck plates, through silence, through the sudden stillness in men who stop mid-sentence when a ship changes its mind about floating. Captives now, they become rumors with names. In different mouths, they are saboteurs, madmen, craftsmen, enemies worthy of a nod. Interrogations follow the script. The divers do not. They spend no more seconds than the clocks they wound. Myths sprout quickly. Most are tidy and wrong. No, the battleships did not vanish into deep water. They settled in shallow harbor, present to the eye, absent to war. No, it was not luck in a rubber hood. It was discipline measured in inches and breaths. No, it was not designed as suicide. Exfiltration was planned. Capture was the price of honest timers. The warning given in the night travels by rumor and logbook and saves men who would have been where water moves fastest. Respect finds room beside rage. War has always been large enough to hold both. What remains is a seam stitched into doctrine. Special operations at sea do not begin here, but here they become a language other navies learn to speak. Swimmers and rebreathers, mini-subs, and charges that wait for dawn. From this grammar grow units with other flags and initials, SBS, UDTs, SEALs, and a permanent note in every harbor master's mind. Depth is also a door. At midnight we wrote, "The harbor believes in its walls." By sunrise, those walls believed in water. By noon, planners on both sides believed in hands. Steady, exact hands that can move strategy where grand machines cannot. And the lesson that outlives the sirens is the one the divers carried in with them. Exactness beats armor when the water is on your side.